the human temple. You know, we've talked about the tabernacle on earth and the tabernacle in heaven, all of which, those symbols to help us understand the work of salvation for the human soul. You know, Christ came as the fulfillment of the earthly tabernacle that was built here, and yet his coming here was yet another example and symbol of what we can become through him. The whole mystery of the gospel, Christ in you, the hope of glory, is for the God Spirit to be filling our lives, and it involves not only the forgiveness of sin, but the cleansing of the temple, the purification of the temple. We have moved to the time in history and the understanding of this message where we're beyond just offering the sacrifices out in the courtyard and sprinkling the blood inside. We need to move deeper in and realize that salvation is about cleansing the soul temple and purifying it. And as we talk about physical health, it is totally, completely, and interrelated and part of that. It is not just something on the side, sort of as a bait to get people to come to evangelistic meetings. The entire essence and heart of the message of salvation is ingrained in victory over sin, over every temptation of the devil to destroy God's work in our lives. And each of the health principles that were given in detail to us are part of that advice, that wisdom, those commandments from God of how to do that. Let's begin our discussion with a word of prayer. Dear God, let your Holy Spirit specially come upon us this hour. Give us clear minds. Let your Spirit bring clear to our minds the truth you would have us understand about how to prepare our bodies so that we can be fit temples, that your Holy Spirit may come and dwell in us, and that we may give the loud cry and be part of your people, standing through the last days, ready to meet you when you come. Amen. There's a lot of disease in the world today. As an ER doc, I'm exposed to a continuous stream. It's nonstop, morning, noon, or whatever hour you go to the ER, it is full of people that are miserable, in pain. Some disease process has reached a crisis or a climax. They can't take it anymore. It's falling apart. Things are miserable. They're often in very life-threatening situations. Their life literally depends on doing something right away, or they're about to perish. You know, this ongoing thing. As I watch it every day and see it, I'm impressed more and more of the cause and effect relationships. You realize these miserable situations they're in did not come without a cause. You know, they've been smoking for so many years, they've been eating this, they've been eating that, they've been trying, and it's built up, it's accumulated, and now they're to the point of desperation. The cause has culminated, you know, in this final effect right here. Today, we're going to spend our time talking about one cause, a key one, sugar, this role of excessive refined sugars in the human diet today. Is probably one of the most devastating things going on related to so many of the disease processes that are affecting us here. You know, when Christ walked this earth, he spent more time healing the sick than he did actually preaching. And yet he was preaching by that, wasn't he? He came to reveal God's character and love. And what better way to reveal that than to meeting the real needs of the people that are suffering and dying all around him. And so he did that work. As his representatives, he gives us that commission to carry on his work in his stead. We, you know, as John says, as he is, so are we in this world. You know, he left us here as his representatives to carry on his work in this world. This Holy Spirit working through us to give that love. We can't just walk around and touch people and say, be healed, as he did. You know, there's too many counterfeit miracle workers today. But Ellen White marks out, he says, but God has marked out another way. and then goes on to describe this message of health, these health principles whereby we can withdraw people from these causes of disease and put them in tune with their Creator, that He can be free to work through them that healing. You know, when we step aside from these things, there really is an opportunity for God to come in line and to heal. You know, every time we try it, it works. You know, God is faithful. You know, there's one, or let's see, maybe before we say that, we should mention it's difficult for us to give that message if we haven't experienced it ourselves. It's hard to go out and give a health message when we're suffering from all the same diseases we're trying to help them get out of. God's looking for a people to step forward in health reform, to step forward in the health message, and to actually take this in hand and live it. Amen. That they can be examples of health. They can be free from diabetes, from obesity, from hypertension, from lipid profiles that are off, from all of these different various diseases that are caused by these things. You know, God has given us, you know, over 150 years ago, He's given us all the advice we need to put this stuff in line. You know, if you read the last few chapters of the book of Exodus, where they're building the tabernacle and getting it ready, you'll find a phrase where it says, and they made it exactly as the Lord commanded. And you'll find it again, and they made it exactly as the Lord commanded. And you actually find it 19 times in those passages. They made it, you know, when they repeat something in Scripture, they're trying to give emphasis. If they repeat it 19 times, do you think they're trying to emphasize something here? We, in this day and age, are God's temple, His tabernacle. At the very end of Exodus, after building the tabernacle exactly as the Lord commanded, what happened? The pillar of fire of God's presence came down and filled the tabernacle. What is it that God plans to do through His church in the very last days of this earth's history? Yes, the infilling of the Holy Spirit. Remember on the day of Pentecost, they came down as the flames of little tongues of fire, and they were filled with the Spirit. And we look forward to a day when there will be a special outpouring of the Holy Spirit so that we can give the final loud cry message to bring this great controversy to an end. But as we look back to the original type back there, don't forget the emphasis. Built exactly as the Lord commanded. Built exactly as the Lord commanded. Built exactly as the Lord commanded, you know. If you open up that chapter in Diets and Foods on desserts, you know, as you read through passages of Scripture, we often find a certain verse that becomes a key text for a message, right? And we call them memory verses, and we memorize those, and then they become a real key for our understanding on a particular topic. Much of our preaching and our teaching of doctrine is built around finding these unique key texts. Of course, the key texts are just explaining a deeper whole of the truth. You know, we just spent the last hour and a half understanding this deep fullness of the truth behind that key text. But we memorize the key text because they summarize and put out there in a key sense the essence of that message. And I'd like to give you one out of that chapter on desserts and counsels on diets and foods on sugar. Sugar clogs the system. It hinders the working of the living machine. You know, that's one you should probably memorize and write down and tape on the front of your refrigerator and your cupboard doors and stuff. Sugar clogs the system. It hinders the working of the living machine. Now we're going to, over the next hour here, show you the biochemical pathways of how this happens. You know, in Ellen White's day, they didn't understand those biochemical pathways. Today, they're understood. And we're going to try to share them with you in a simple, clear way that'll make this message so clear that it's just like an arrow right between the eyes. You're going to get it. So that's my objective. You can tell me at the end if I have succeeded in getting that message across. But that's that message right there. God gave it to us 150 years ago. You know, he's given us a lot of health principles. We're not talking about all of them today, just this one. But, you know, one of them that's sort of prominent in Adventism is vegetarianism. We're not talking about being veganism, I'm talking about vegetarian. Adventists don't eat the dead carcasses of animals. We don't eat beef and chicken and fish and, you know, these things. Pork, yeah, pork definitely is on there. If you take a surveys in North America, you find about 50% of Seventh-day Adventists actually practice vegetarianism, don't eat meat. And the other half actually still eat meat. But when we look at this principle of sugar, I mean, it's something that probably steps on all of our toes. You know, it has become so ingrained. I mean, you can't go to a church potluck, but what it isn't piled out there. And we've talked about arranging this seminar to serve fruit instead, although I noticed there was a huge plate of pastries on the table this morning and a big thing of syrup out there. I suppose it's not so much in arranging and asking them not to serve the pastries. God's asking us to resist temptations. And perhaps tomorrow morning the pastry bowl will still be full after dinner. We'll see. That'll maybe be the measure of whether I've actually communicated clearly in my message here tomorrow. Go back and that'll be my report card. I'll see how well I've succeeded here. Let's start by taking a look at sugar and obesity. Back in the 1890s, when Ellen White lived, the obesity incidence in this country was about 3 to 4% that actually had the BMI, body mass index, that would be classified as obese. By 1975, we were up to 15% of the population that met this. Today, 32% was the last number I've heard. One thing I said 39%. We've had a huge rise in obesity, and not just since the 1800s. I'm saving this board here for something very special, so we've got this to put some other writing on, scribbling on ahead of time to illustrate something here. But you make a graph here, starting about 1960 over here, and progressing through the last 4 decades up to today. What you'll find is the incidence of obesity goes something like this. In other words, more and more and more and more. It's not just continuing on, it's more and more and more. Well, why is that? And the first answer that usually comes to most people is, well, because we're eating so much junk food and fat food, there's so much fat. But it doesn't really hold up to scientific evaluation. If you look, what is the fat content of the diet? You get a line here, let me get a different color here. A line that goes something like this. Something like this. You know, there's even been this low-fat trend trying to get fat-free this, fat-free that. And our fat consumption is, in other words, we were still eating lots of fried, greasy foods way back here in the 1960s. So we can't really explain that trend by all the fat, greasy foods at McDonald's. What has followed this trend right here? Yeah. That is soda pop. This is fat here. And this one is obesity. Yeah. We are 25 pounds heavier than we were 25 years ago. The average population here, we're 25 pounds heavier than we were 25 years ago. Over 30% obesity. In children today, in schools, obesity rate is up to 30%. If you separate out Black and Hispanic, it's up to 40% of the children are obese. Not just overweight, I'm talking about that meet the criteria for obesity. Our obesity weight has tripled in the last 3 years. And the one thing that correlates with it is the intake of sugar. And of course, the easiest way to take sugar in is to dissolve it in solution and drink it. Soda pop, sugar-flavored drinks, sports drinks, fruit punches, these things just full of sugar, flavored in ways, and we drink down tons of that. Of course, we don't just put it there. We start adding it to everything has sugar in it. Cookies, candies, cakes, pies, desserts, the dessert. I mean, if they put it in bread, they put it in, if you just look down there and start reading ingredients list, they're all full of sugar. I mean, go to the cereal aisle, and you start going down there, and you look at the boxes. Every single one of them has sugar, often as one of its second or even first ingredient I've seen on some boxes. It is just huge how much sugar they are putting into it. I think in the entire roll I found plain shredded wheat and grape nuts as the only two that they hadn't put it in. Everything else was just full of added sugar. We're putting it everywhere. We're feeding it to our kids. It's become, I've seen it in the emergency room. Mom will bring in this little toddler that's still on a bottle. The bottle's full of Coke. Well, he likes it. She said, but don't you realize that? Well, but he likes it. It's okay. He likes it. He doesn't like the other stuff. This keeps him happy. There is another statement made by our prophet back over 150 years ago. You'll find it in that same chapter on desserts. Far too much sugar is ordinarily used in food. Far too much sugar is ordinarily used in food. And she goes on cakes, sweet puddings, pastries, jams. That word pastry, she has a lot of bad things to say about that word pastry. Even more if you start combining sugar and milk, like ice creams, and she talks about custards. We don't use different kind of thing where you're mixing the dairy and that. But we won't be focusing on all of those combination issues. We're going to stick just to the metabolism here of sugar for this hour. Now, this statement, far too much sugar is ordinarily used in food. Do you know how much sugar was being used in food when she wrote that? Well, I looked it up. You can go back. There's statistics on it. I found out that back in the 1880s, the average U.S. consumption of sugar was 5 pounds per person. Another thing gave it as around 8 pounds per person. Yeah, per year. Yeah, yeah. Today we're up to about that per day, aren't we? And it's true. Today the numbers are. The conservative number is 130 pounds per person per year. And if you inch out the young people, it's even higher, 150 pounds per day. I saw somebody had estimated at 180 pounds. But yeah, the conservative one's 130, 150. Of course, remember, that's the average. So there's at least half the people that are more than the average taking even more than that amount. A huge amount of sugar is being consumed today compared to when she wrote, far too much sugar is ordinarily used in food. So if we put the facts together here, I mean, what is the sugar consumption today? Yeah. If back then she was talking about it clogging the system and hindering the works of the living machine, and these desserts should never be put on our table and all those things, what would she say today with the sugar consumption? Yeah. Type 2 diabetes. You know what the incidence of type 2 diabetes was in the United States back in the 1880s? 3 cases of diabetes per 100,000 population. Do you know what it is today? 8,000 per 100,000 population. You think there's a correlation? Yeah, I do the epidemiology on that. There's a direct correlation. Scientists go out and pull it out and take a look at it, and one of the best ones I saw was a meta-analysis where they took actually 88 different studies, combined all of them, very rigorous statistical analysis, direct correlation between sugar, drinking soda, and diabetes, type 2 diabetes, not type 1, that's a totally different disease, type 2 diabetes. If they had a couple of cans of sugar per day, even higher. And so it was. The more sodas they would drink, more, or sugar drinks. They did it for sodas and they did it for like sugar drinks, these non-soda sugar drinks, same correlation. Then they did it for juice, grapefruit juice and orange juice. Is there a lot of sugar in that? Yes. Guess what? No correlation at all. We'll come back and talk to that. Or maybe we could just, no, we'll come back to that. You know, the Coca-Cola conspiracy. 1915. You know what happened in 1915? That's the year that Ellen White died. Yeah, that was the year she died, 1915. It's also the year that Coca-Cola introduced their famous Coca-Cola shaped bottle. It's so famous that you see that shape, you think Coca-Cola. It has become a very trademark shape, that bottle. Do you know how much that bottle held? 6.5 ounces. 6.5 ounces. Of course, if you do the math on that, if you drank one of those every day for a year, and you figure out the number of calories and do it times the number of days in a year, it's kind of like doing the prophecies. You count up all the time things and come to your thing. At the end of that, you come to, you know, if you use 3,500 calories per pound, if all of that was extra calories in addition to your food that you needed for ordinary body maintenance, then you would have gained 8 pounds per year drinking one of those Cokes. 1955, they introduced the 10-ounce bottle, the ones they put in all the vending machines. When I was growing up as a kid, that's what I remember. There were these bottles of sodas of all different kinds. There were all these 10-ounce bottles in the Coke machine, you know, the different soda machines, and you get sodas there. You get orange sodas, grape sodas, all these things, full of sugar, 10 ounces. If you put that through the mouth, you would gain 13 pounds a year if you ate one of those per day. In 1960, the aluminum can, how much does it hold? 12 ounces, yeah. We still have the aluminum cans today. They're still with us. We have those 12-ounce aluminum cans. You put that through the mouth, 16 pounds a year. 1992, what came in 1992? The 20-ounce plastic bottles. I mean, what do you find in almost all the vending machines today? 20-ounce plastic bottles. Yeah, that's become the standard. And you put that through the mouth, that could give you 26 pounds per year if you drank one of those per day. But of course, we don't even stop with that. You stop at the quick stop, and what do you get? A 44 ounce. 44 ounces will give you 57 pounds a year. And they make that isn't the biggest one, the 64 ounce. You have the 64 ounce? Yeah, how much that'll give you? 83 pounds if you drank a 64 ounce of soda there. Enough of it there. They did another interesting experiment on children. They did this in the schools done in England, and what they did was they took the soda pop vending machines out of the school, but they only did it in half the schools in the district. The other half, they left them there. Guess what happened? They carefully measured the obesity rate, the incidence in that school. There was how many kids in the school met the criteria for obesity. And you know what they had here at the beginning of the year? It was the same in both the ones with and without at the beginning of the year. At the end of the year, the ones that had no soda machines, it was still the same rate at the end of the year. In the schools that had the vending machines, yeah, direct correlation there with the availability of the sodas in the school and the incidence of obesity in the school. So what is this sugar we're talking about here? Sugar is what? Sugar is sucrose. Well, we're going to have a chemistry class today. Sugar is sucrose. What's sucrose? What's sucrose? Well, you take one molecule of fructose. Fructose is a 5-carbon sugar, 5-membered ring there, 5 carbons. We'll just call it fructose there. And you take one molecule of glucose. Glucose is a 6-carbon sugar. The 6 carbons, and they got hydrogen and oxygen arranged around them there. And you bind them together here with a chemical bond into what we call a disaccharide, 1 glucose, 1 fructose, and that is sucrose, pure cane sugar. And this is the sugar that we use and we add to everything, and adds these qualities, fructose and glucose. In 1975, something happened to the sugar industry. From the Japanese. You know what they sent us? They invented high fructose corn syrup. Some people said, well, that was sort of revenge for the atom bombs we dropped over there. High fructose corn syrup has killed millions more than atom bombs ever touched. High fructose corn syrup is become massive throughout our society today. High fructose corn syrup is sweeter than sucrose. If you put sucrose at the 100 scale, on a scale, of 1 to 100, fructose is 120. If you put, high fructose corn syrup is 120. Yeah, pure fructose is what's really sweet. If you split those apart and to measure just the fructose part by itself, it's 175. Sometimes some places are starting to add that in certain drinks. Really deadly. What is high fructose corn syrup? Well, they take this, goes through a process they do, but basically you end up with a solution that is a solution of glucose and fructose. It's about 55% fructose, 45% glucose. So similar in composition to that, but it's separated. It's 2 simple sugars rather than a disaccharide. Which is worse for you, high fructose corn syrup or sucrose? They're the same. They're exactly the same. Sucrose is absolutely as harmful to the human body as high fructose corn syrup. What happens to sucrose when it gets inside your body? You have enzymes to digest it. There is an enzyme called sucrase. Within 1 nanosecond after being inside, you cleave this bond and you end up with a solution of fructose and glucose, 50-50. High fructose corn syrup's 55-45, virtually the same. They both have the same properties when we're talking about the chemistry of the human body. What about honey? Natural honey. Everybody says, oh, I just only use natural honey. What is honey? Sugar. 50% glucose, 50% fructose. What about brown rice syrup, agave syrup? That's the real one. 50% glucose, 50% fructose. Yeah, we're talking the same thing here. They've got little bits of flavoring. They extracted them from different plants, whether you get it from sugar beets or agaves, or the honeybees make it for you from nectars. We're ending up with the same thing, fructose and glucose in a solution here, which we're adding back into the diet in huge amounts. Okay, the question often comes up, and I think we want to be sure we know the answer to this. What about fruit? Is fruit nice and sweet? Yeah. What's it sweetened with? Sucrose. Yeah, it's got sucrose in it. I mean, the word fructose comes from fruit sugar. The question is, what's in there? Fiber. Whenever God puts a poison out there, he packages it with the antidote. Yeah. Fiber. Fiber is the antidote there. And the other thing has to do with the amount. The amount of sugar in a peach, and I'm not talking one of those sour, hard ones from the store. I'm talking about a true tree-ripened one here from the valley that is soft and just so sweet it just melts in your mouth. The amount of sugar in there is a minute fraction of the amount of sugar that's going to be in a can of soda. Yeah. Here's some statistics. On a diet consisting of fruits and vegetables, you will consume about 15 grams of fructose per day. What was our historical consumption of fructose? Well, in the first half of the last century here, from say 1900 up until around World War II, the consumption was 15 grams to about 25 grams. It was what the typical consumption was. So because of added sugar in the diet, we are now probably getting 10 more grams, from 15 to 10. We've almost doubled, not quite, but there was more sucrose, more fructose. Excuse me, the numbers here are for pure fructose, this part right here. By the way, as you're going to see, fructose is poison. Glucose is what was designed for fuel. This is poison in the body. And by the time we're done here, you'll see that. In 1977, that was when they started introducing high fructose corn syrup. Before that really took off. We were at 37 grams of fructose. By 1994, we were at 55, today 75. So from 15 grams on a nice, healthy fruit and vegetable whole plant food diet up to 75 grams on the average American diet today. What's that? This is per day. Yeah, these are per day, not per year. These are per day, grams per day that would sum up in the average diet there. But God packaged it with the antidote. One other thing that sugar does relating to obesity has to do with appetite. Let's save this here. I'm going to stick it up here. Isn't that cool? They make giant Post-it pads. Your appetite is a function of your brain, right? Yeah, you get hungry, you feel it, you need it, you crave it, you choose to go eat it, right? It takes place up here. And we actually know where it is. It's in the hypothalamus, this area in the very center of the brain where we have a lot of our automatic functions of the body. This is where the appetite center is. This is where you feel hungry. Well, now there's two particular hormones that are produced by the body that have an effect on them. One of those is called ghrelin. Ghrelin. We know where ghrelin comes from? It comes from the stomach. It's actually made in the stomach here from an empty stomach. Empty stomach puts out ghrelin, which goes and acts on the hypothalamus and the brain. And what does the ghrelin say? It says, I'm hungry. I'm hungry. Stomach's empty, I'm hungry. Now there's another hormone that acts on here that has sort of the opposite effect. Leptin. Have you ever heard of leptin? Where does it come from? It comes from fat cells. And what does leptin say to the brain? It says, I'm full. Yeah. You know, if you've got a lot of fat out here, it's making a lot of leptin and saying, hey, we got lots of energy reserves. You don't need to rush out there for the next meal. Hey, you can relax. Wait a while. Don't worry about it. We're full. So it says I'm full. It says I've got lots of energy reserves. You don't need to go out and gorge yourself. We're doing just fine here. Now, what we find is if you eat a nice meal right here, it stops ghrelin from coming out. And so we stop being hungry once we've eaten a good meal. Now, if you eat the meal real fast, you can get more down before that comes out. So the whole idea is supposed to chew your food, relax, take your meal, help overeating. But anyway, empty stomachs do that. Guess what? Sugar has no effect on that. You can take a great big soda, you know, those great big 64 ounces, Ghrelin's still coming out. So Ghrelin is not suppressed by sucrose. What about leptin? Sugar suppresses leptin. It doesn't actually block it from the fat from trying to say it. It blocks the receptors here in the hypothalamus. It basically, this can't feel it. It can't see it. It can't sense it. You know, sort of like insulin resistance. Well, this is leptin resistance. And a sugar diet gives you leptin resistance. And so this I'm full and don't need any more message is not getting there. So the hypothalamus is saying, wow, we don't have very many reserves. And Ghrelin is saying, hey, come on, keep eating. We're hungry. We're empty down here. What's going to be the tendency? Yeah, we're going to overeat. Okay. You ready for the heart of the message here? Amen. We're going to look at the effect of this poison called fructose and how it's metabolized in the body. And it has to do with the liver. And I'm going to draw a large liver cell here. Now, the liver does thousands of different things, and we're only going to talk about carbohydrate metabolism in the liver. So all of the other structures and all of the other thousands of the things that the liver does is not going to be involved in what we're talking about today. Just carbohydrate metabolism. And I'm going to start off and talk about glucose. Glucose is what your body uses for food. When you eat potatoes that you had for breakfast here, they're full of starch. And what is starch? 100% glucose. That's the fuel that God designed us to run on. And even if you had the fruit that had glucose and fructose as sucrose in it, what did you get? Well, you got half glucose and half fructose. And the half you got, we already talked about, was very minimal in terms of if you picked up one of those pastries over there. Okay, so there's a difference there in volume. Now, the other difference there, of course, is the fruit came packaged with what? All of the fiber. That fiber is mixing with it, so it's releasing slowly over many hours. If you had one of those pastries and all the frosting on there, that's already in your bloodstream, your sugar level up to here and being metabolized in your liver during Pastor Bohr's lecture. Okay? So I'm going to put glucose over here. And the glucose goes into the liver cell here. By the way, how much of this glucose is going to go into the liver cell to be metabolized? Nope, about 20% of it. Where's the other 80%? Going to every other cell in your body. Your brain was using glucose to think. Your muscles were using some glucose. Your epithelial cells in your skin, your eyeball needed some glucose. Every cell in your body needs glucose. That's the fuel that it runs on. It's going everywhere. But now some of it's coming in here. And what is it doing in here? Well, it's storing it. We're going to make, you know how you can food and make preserves and save it till later and you put it in a pantry, then you can open up the jar and eat it later? Okay, so we've got some canned glucose here. I'm going to draw a jar here. The lid on it. Oh, it looks kind of funny. Okay, so this is canned glucose. What do we call that? Glycogen. Yeah, glycogen is just glucose canned up. You just take a glucose, stick it all together in a big giant popcorn ball all bound together. That's that. And of course, this is actually a two-way arrow here. Because you can store it and you can release it. Now, most of you probably had your supper last night sometime in the afternoon or evening before you came here. And then you had nothing to eat, during the lectures, nothing to eat when you went to bed, you slept all night long, and you didn't have breakfast till 9:30 this morning. Well, that meal you ate yesterday, what was happening to it? It was before the lecture was over last night. You'd absorbed it all. So what were you running on all night? Yeah, in other words, 20% that went into here, and now it's being released back out. It's a very reversible in and out thing to always maintain an adequate level of glucose so every cell in your body has glucose. Nice arrangement, yeah. So even during these morning lectures, those of you that went for your 4-mile walk with Jeannie this morning, where'd you get the energy for that walk? Yeah, you'd stored up some energy, and now the energy was being used to maintain you during that walk time. Now, some of this is used by the cell for its own energy needs. So I'm going to put down here, I'm going to draw a mitochondria in here. You know what a mitochondria is? That's the energy factory for a cell. Glucose goes into a mitochondria, and it takes it apart, gets all of the energy out of it, and uses it in different forms throughout the cell for all of the different functions that the cell needs. So we're going to draw a little arrow off of here, showing the very small amount of this, what's coming in here, is actually coming down and supplying the mitochondria, which supplies the energy that the cell needs. So there, in a very simple form, is glucose metabolism. Is glycogen toxic to the body? No. You can put, how much can you put in there with a problem? No problem. You can store lots of it. There are some children that have a glycogen storage disease, and one type of glycogen storage disease, they don't have the enzyme to release glycogen. And these children get hypoglycemic very easy. They have to have continuous supply of glucose coming in, or they just pass out because they don't have the ability to release glycogen. They're missing that enzyme. What about inside their liver? Do they have glycogen? Huge amounts. They got these giant livers. Their livers fill up almost the entire abdominal cavity. I mean, they start getting a huge abdomen. The livers is coming out here. They get these gigantic livers because they're storing so much glycogen. But the liver works just fine. They're not in liver failure. The liver works fine. Glycogen is not poisonous. Glycogen is the way we were meant to work. It's how the body was meant to run. And even in that grossly abnormal disease state, it's not a problem. Okay, now we're going to talk about poison. And to help you really understand and get the picture of what we're going to talk about, before we talk about fructose poisoning, we're going to talk about another poison, another carbohydrate, ethanol. You know what ethanol is? Alcohol, yeah. Very common in our society today, hopefully not as common within our church. Okay, so there is some ethanol. Okay? Now, ethanol is a little bit different than glucose. Ethanol, about 20% of it will go to the brain and cause intoxication, all kinds of problems. You know, we have that in our church, our ER all the time. It's just alcohol is a big problem with its intoxication. But we're going to talk about those acute poisoning effects, but they really are devastating. Not only do they cause the intoxication and all the stuff that goes along with it, they really destroy the neurons in the brain. Yeah, you lose neurons, particularly in the frontal lobe and the cerebellum. Now, the cerebellum is where you have coordination and balance. The frontal lobe is decision, your power of choice, your character, really the essential things in life are coming from that frontal lobe functioning there. And that's one of the things that's being destroyed, not just temporarily sedated while you're intoxicated. I can show you a CT scan of an individual that came in. She was having coordination problems. Her doctor sent her in concerned that she might have a cerebellar tumor because of all this. I CT scanned her. She had classic alcoholic brain. The cerebellum was all shrunk up and the frontal lobe was all shrunk up. I confronted her and asked her about her history of alcoholism. Oh, no, I don't drink. Well, I asked her a little, well, yeah, a little wine. And it came down to, maybe 1 or 2 glasses 2 or 3 times a week. She was in her 40s, and she had already lost that much brain function. You know, a little wine, people talk, well, take a little wine, it's good for you. It's not good for you. It's poison. Yeah. But it's not just poison in the acute intoxication. 80% of it comes to the liver. The liver takes care of poison in the body. Most of these toxic drugs that doctors give for all different things, your body can't handle them directly. They jam up or do whatever they're supposed to do, but they end up going to the liver to be detoxified, meaning the liver takes them through some metabolic process, trying to break them down and handle them and get them out of the system. And that's true for alcohol. And so the alcohol comes in here. And of course, in here, it has to be broken down. And one of the things, as we start to break it down here, it turns into some toxic stuff. One of them is called acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde is bad stuff. It's toxic, really breaks down, causes a lot of damage inside the liver. And as we start damaging and destroying liver cells, we end up with cirrhosis of the liver failure, a common alcoholic problem. I see it all the time. These poor fellows, their liver is in cirrhosis, can't function, they can't make proteins, their coag times are off, they get ascites, their belly swells up, they turn yellow with ascites. Their liver is just no longer there because of the cirrhosis. Again, the alcohol turning to acetaldehyde didn't do that, but it's transferred on. After it does that damage, all of it is eventually transferred over to the mitochondria. I mean, ethanol is a carbohydrate, and you can burn it for energy. And indeed, it comes over as an acetyl-CoA into here, and the mitochondria can use it for energy. But there's a problem with that picture. How much energy did the cell need? A little bit. How much alcohol are we putting into the system here? 80% of whatever we're drinking is coming right in here. Well, it's way more than we can use here, so the mitochondria can't use it all. So what does it do? It's got to pass it on. So where's it going to pass it on to? Well, there's another important enzyme system here. You know what this is? This is the fat factory. The fat factory is going to make fat for us. So this comes down here, and it all goes into the fat factory, and then we make it into fat. So let's put this out here, and we just make a big old droplet of fat here. Kind of puts it inside little globules, little vacuoles here within the side of the cell, and keep making more of this fat, and it just starts filling up these cells. Eventually it's so full of fat, we call it fatty liver disease. Yeah. Okay, so this alcoholic fatty liver disease here, because it's just getting full of fat. But there is more than the cell can hold, so it starts exporting it. So it sends it out. And how does it transport it? Well, it packs up in little trucks here. Yeah, you know what we call these? LDL. They do your cholesterol fact, and they make profile, and they give you all the different things. There's your LDL. Yeah. And so what do we have over here? We've got the fat cells. Yeah. And so okay. So we're both making fatty liver, we're transporting it out, and building up obesity in the body. The beer belly. What is the beer belly? Yeah, the people that drink a lot of beer, they end up with this big central obesity from drinking all that beer, because they can't store it as glycogen or burn it directly as energy. There's no way to make ethanol into glycogen. The only thing they can do with it is try to send it to the mitochondria to burn it. And since it's way more than the mitochondria can burn with most people's alcoholic problems, it goes to the fat factory, resulting in fatty liver disease and beer belly. Okay, now we're ready to talk about fructose poisoning. There's our fructose. Now, there's no way to make fructose into glycogen. You cannot directly burn fructose that way. You just can't. There's no way to do it there. It's not used for fuel that way. How much fructose is going to the liver? Any ideas? 100% of it. There is no other cell in the body that has a use for fructose. Nobody can use fructose in the body. It's a poison. It's not food. You don't use it for food. So 100% of it goes in here. None of it can be made into glycogen. So the liver, in its usual things, tries to burn it, put it into the furnace and burn it. So let's send it down here and put it into the furnace so we can burn it. Okay, so again, with the sugar loads that we talk about we're consuming today, how much fructose is coming into the body? Huge amounts of it. How much of it's going to the liver? All of it. All of it's going to these mitochondria. How much does a mitochondria use? You know, virtually none of that. So what happens to it? It's all going to the fat factory, and the fat factory is exporting it out, and we end up with the fructose belly. And we also end up with fatty liver disease. Doctors call it non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Somebody hasn't drunk a bit of beer or wine, they're not an alcoholic, and yet they've got a fatty liver just like an alcoholic. Yeah, I see that all the time. We do ultrasound and CT scans. It's, you know, as universal as gallstones and obesity. You know, it's just everywhere. Fatty liver disease. So we've got fatty liver disease, the fructose belly, all from this extra fructose we're loading into the body. It's poisoning here. There's more that it does here. Some of it is exported as, let's see, free fatty acids here. And you know where they go? Let's put it here, free fatty acids. We're going to go out here to the muscle cell. Let's draw as a muscle out here. So here's a muscle. Let's label it here so I know what it is. It doesn't look that much like a muscle. Okay, and what happens to these free fatty acids in a muscle? They can burn some of them, but with the loads of sugar coming in, we've got so much sugar and insulin coming in, the muscle is not turned on for burning fatty acids. It turns on to burn fatty acids in starvation state, but because of all of the energy that's coming in here, it's got insulin, it's turned on the glucose burning, and so it's not using fatty acids for fuel, and it actually rebuilds them into fat, and it stores fat in here and makes the muscle so filled up with fat that it actually becomes what we call insulin resistant. And as a result, we've got increased insulin levels in the blood and increased blood glucose, because we're making all of this sugar out here, and it can't get into the muscles, then it backs up in the blood right here. So we get hyperglycemia and hyperinsulinemia because all the free fatty acids are going to the muscle here. There's another thing that pushes down that road right there, and that is something called JNC1. The scientists just call it junk 1. And it really is junk. It's a major inflammatory damaging pathway in the body. But this junk 1 actually goes over here. Now this glucose coming into the cell has a what we call a sugar door. Any of you have heard my lecture on diabetes and the sugar door, and the insulin opens up the door and puts the sugar in the cell? Well, that's what's going on here. Well, this actually attaches to that sugar door, that insulin receptor, and blocks it. Just totally blocks it. Actually, it adds a serine residue on one of the proteins that's part of the tool there. And by blocking this, it makes it harder for glucose to get in. So these are blocked, so glucose can't come in. So what's that going to do? The same thing here. Increased blood glucose, increased insulin. Now, as we start increasing insulin and blood glucose in the body, what disease comes to mind? Type 2 diabetes, right? I mean, that's what type 2 diabetes is. Right, yeah, it's insulin resistance. In other words, the muscles and the liver and everything is resistant to glucose. It can't use it because it's already too full and blocked up. And so as a result, we end up here with diabetes, type 2. So there we go, type 2 diabetes. Now the fructose is doing something else in the cell right here. There's another thing that it makes here called xylose 5-phosphate. And this xylose 5-phosphate, one of these things that it makes, actually comes down here and works on the fat factory. And basically, xylose 5-phosphate comes to the factory and says, flip on all the switches. We've got major production going here. And it basically turns the fat factory on in high gear, so it's really working hard, churning out a lot of fat for us. So now we've got all of this fructose coming in, huge amount of substrate going to the factory, this message coming down and saying make more fat, and so we're churning out all this fat, making more fatty liver, making more obesity, sending more fatty acids, causing more insulin resistance, and now we're blocking the glucose coming in, so we're creating diabetes out here, obesity out here, fatty liver disease in here. But that's not all. There's more. Okay, I'm going to draw an artery up here to explain. We're going to talk about blood pressure. Yeah. Drawing, this is the corner of an artery. This is the lumen. Here's the endothelial cells that line the lumen. And then here is the muscle around it. Now the muscle can contract or relax to change the size of the vessel, to change your pressure, to allow more blood to certain areas and not to certain areas. And how do we control this muscle, increasing the pressure or releasing it, relaxing it? Well, we have adrenergic agents, adrenaline, epinephrine, norepinephrine, that come here, as well as sympathetic nerves that cause the muscle to contract, to squeeze down, increasing your pressure there. Well, we have to have a counterbalancing factor, but we don't have a set of nerves or transmitters. What we have is in these endothelial cells, there is an enzyme called nitric oxide synthetase. This enzyme makes nitric oxide. Now that's not the word no. That's the chemical symbol for nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is released from the epithelial cells. They soak into the muscle cells, and as they soak in, they cause the muscle cells to relax. And there's this ongoing balance between relaxation from the nitric oxide and adrenergic stimulation. Now, of course, if you just had a cup of coffee, you're really squeezing those down there, right? Coffee, kind of liquid adrenaline, right? One of those regular big ones like you get at Starbucks, you know how much they have? They will double your circulating adrenaline levels. And then we wonder why we have blood pressure problems, so we go take some blood pressure pills for it. Okay, now how does fructose enter in here? Well, one of the other things it does in here, the process of coming through here is very inefficient. It recycles a lot of ADP, and it ends up making a product called uric acid. You've all heard of uric acid? Gout? Yeah, uric acid, gout. Well, uric acid does something else in the body besides cause gout. Uric acid comes over here, and uric acid works on the nitric oxide synthetase. And you know what it does? It blocks it. And so what happens? As the uric acid comes up, as it's blocking these, they're not making nitric oxide, so we don't have the relaxation to counterbalance the contraction. And so what are we doing? We're driving up the blood pressure. So we can add another disease here, hypertension. And in fact, you can do studies and show, they take these obese children, many of them also have high blood pressure, directly related to the amount of uric acid in the blood. They can give a medicine, allopurinol, that blocks uric acid, and their blood pressures come back down to normal. So we know this is the mechanism that's taking place right here. It's the uric acid from the fructose consumption that's blocking the nitric oxide that we need to relax our muscles and give us a normal blood pressure. Okay, but that's not all. Have you heard of AGEs? Advanced Glycation End Products. Let's put that down here. Let's get another color. AGE. What are AGEs? These AGEs are where sugar sticks onto protein molecules. And there's a lot of important protein molecules in your body, and they perform all kinds of important functions, which is determined by their shape. And once you stick glucose on there and change their shape, it changes their function, which basically means they stop working. Diabetics who run a lot of high blood sugars often get a lot of AGEs in their body, results in a lot of end disease. But in particular, the AGEs that stick on hemoglobin, we measure. It's called Hemoglobin A1c, and we often use that as sort of a long-term measurement of how good their sugar control is, how much of these AGEs have been made in the hemoglobin in the red blood cells. Okay, well, it's that type of thing, but it can affect cells in your neurons. That's what causes diabetic neuropathy. It can affect any cell in your body. You start sticking sugar on it, it doesn't work. AGEs are something bad. The body knows it, and the body has the macrophages, you know, your garbage collectors, your soldiers that go out to get rid of enemies. They know AGEs are bad, and they go and try to destroy AGEs when they see them. Now, if we get a lot of these AGEs here, I'm going to draw another artery for us here again, artery cross-section here. And these AGEs come down here. And this right underneath the endothelial layer is where they get attacked by the macrophages. And what do they start forming there? We call it plaque, yeah. This big inflammatory reaction in the artery walls here. And of course it builds up big chunks of plaque sometimes in places here. By the way, if you want to know how much of this is built up inside your body, we can measure it for you with the ultrasound machine here. We'll do a few here during the break. I'll do them again Saturday night and Sunday morning if anybody wants to take a look and actually see how much of this is. We look in the carotid artery, but whatever we find in the carotid artery, we know is through the rest of the body because it's all got the same blood circulating through it. It's got the same thing, and we find it correlates really well. Now, what does fructose have to do with AGEs? Well, fructose is 7 times more active in making AGEs than glucose or other sugars. So here we got this huge load of fructose that's coming in with all the sugar we're taking in. And what's it doing? 7 times more, that's 700%. 700% more AGEs with all of this fructose load than we would be getting with just a normal glucose load. So we get these high levels of fructose circulating in the blood. They're creating the AGEs. The AGEs are going down here and causing this. And of course, what does this cause? Myocardial infarction, heart attacks we call it, and strokes. Well, we got lots of bad things going on there, don't we? Well, did you know fructose was that bad? Fructose is poison. I mean, just think about what we call the metabolic syndrome today. You know, all the things that make up part of this metabolic syndrome. And we find fructose here at the key center of all of that. Fructose is causing obesity. Fructose is causing insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. Fructose is causing fatty liver disease. Fructose is causing hypertension. And fructose is causing heart attacks and strokes. Now do you see, in a way you maybe didn't before, the truth of Ellen White's statement? Sugar clogs the system. It hinders the working of the living machine. 150 years before scientists understood it. By the way, this may look complicated. This is simplified, really. You get out, go home and get out your copy of Lininger's textbook on biochemistry and open it up, and you'll find that they understand the metabolic pathways for all of this stuff. Yeah, they know the enzymes and what they do. They know the chemical structure of every step. These aren't single arrows. There's like whole bunches of steps along all of these and how they all interact. All of these fat synthesis ones, gluconeogenesis, lipogenesis, all of this stuff. They've got all of this stuff figured out on a chemical level. And I was thinking even if maybe I should copy that all and get this great big chart with all of these symbols on it and pass it on. You'll take it home and put it on your wall. But I don't know if that would just kind of overwhelm people to look at it. Even this is a little overwhelming here, huh? But the truth of that statement, sugar clogs the system. It hinders the working of the living machine. When you think about that, you realize why Ellen White back in her day was saying that 5 pounds of sugar a day was far too much. Well, that was, 5 per year back then. 5 pounds per year was too much. Yeah, 5 pounds per year was too much. And today, I mean, you know what 150 pounds of sugar would look like in sacks of sugar if we piled it up here on the stage? Yeah. We're living in the time of Earth's history, the time of the history of the church, where God is asking us to do something far beyond what he has asked in the past. He's preparing a people for translation, a people to resist every temptation of Satan as he resisted every temptation of Satan. And when you realize his whole purpose of coming to this earth here, dying for us, to leave us this example of how we can do the same thing he did. The promises are full in there that we are to be partakers of the divine nature through the promises given us in the scripture. And as we partake of that divine nature, we are promised that we will overcome as he overcame. Did he ever give in to any temptation? Did he ever face a temptation over appetite? Did he ever have to face a temptation over sugar? Well, his temptation was over whole grain bread. And he had been fasting how long? How hungry do you think he was after 40 days? How much glycogen reserves did he have? What happened to his fat reserves? What happened to all the fatty acid reserves? What was his ghrelin level? Really high. What was his leptin level? 0. Yeah, I mean, how did he feel like at the moment? I mean, how badly did he crave food at that moment? I mean, probably more intensely than you crave chocolate cake or a root beer float. His cravings for food at that time were extremely intense. And yet, he was not willing to take one step outside of his Father's will to satisfy that. What is God's will for us today in regard to our health? If we are coming back to building that temple exactly as the Lord commanded, here's another one from that same chapter. From the light given me, sugar, when largely used, are we largely using it today? Is more injurious than meat. Yeah. You notice that statement started out with, what was the first phrase? From the light given me. What does that mean? Yeah, the angel of the Lord specifically came to her in a vision and showed her this. It wasn't just some idea about sugar's bad and we want to be healthy that she had. The angel of the Lord specifically came and gave her this information. Now, back when Moses was building the tabernacle there in the wilderness of the children of Israel, did God tell him how to build it? Yes. Exactly, every detail, every piece of material, the dimensions, the size of this, the size of that, where's to be placed, what kind of threads are to be used here, what kind of material. It went on and on and on, extremely. You read those chapter after chapter of all of these details of exactly how the tabernacle was to be built. And so in these last days, in the antitypical, as we are building God's tabernacle, waiting for the infilling of his Spirit so that we can reach the culmination of the great controversy here, did God send us some special instruction? Did he tell us detail by detail? It wasn't just sort of a general, yeah, build me a temple and don't eat meat, you know. No, he sent a lot of specific details here. And he said, from the light given me, sugar, when largely used, is more injurious than meat. Sugar clogs the system. It hinders the working of the living machine. We can today, by God's grace, accept the filling of his Spirit. We can resist temptation just as he did. You know, a really good resource is Ellen White's writings on the temptations of Christ. There's a couple of chapters there in the Great Controversy that go over the temptations. That first chapter includes all that temptation on appetite. But there's a fuller one she gave. It was written in the Review and Herald in a series of articles over quite a period of time. I went through, you know, ran for several months there. They've reprinted it in a little book entitled Confrontation. There's some over there if you want to get one, or you get them at the ABC. The book Confrontation is this, you know, in a much fuller, more expansive way, she's dealed out, you know, article after article after article, covering the temptations of Christ and how he overcame temptation. And she makes a lot of applications specifically to overcoming the temptations on appetite. As we overcome and deal with temptations on appetite, we are really at the heart of the great controversy. That's always where it starts. And as you gain victory here, it gives you the strength as we start dealing with other areas of character. If we're not willing to face up and deal with this one, the others all slip out too. You know, we're living in a time where the angel is saying, get ready, get ready, get ready. There's a time coming when the probation closes, and those who are not ready will not be filled by the Spirit and will not be entering through the gates into the city. And now is the time when God says to his people, come out and be separate. Touch not the unclean thing. You know, come to me, be my peculiar people, and I will come and live in you and be in you. I'll be your God. You know, this whole picture of God coming down and filling his temple. And we're not waiting just for the outpouring of the latter rain. That will come to those who have already been filled in this early rain time with his Spirit, and through his Spirit, as he, when he walked this earth, overcame temptation to sin. And fructose is a poison. Did we make that case clear? If you want afterwards, you can bring your iPhone up closer and take a close-up picture of that and save it for later. You know, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. That one's probably worth $1 million. You know, with that information right there, you can cure most of the diseases in this country today. You know, you don't need Obamacare. That's what you need right there. That will do more to take care of health care than any amount of government politicians can arrange. Any drugs the pharmaceutical industry comes up with. You know, you can take drugs up here to try to control hypertension. They only control the symptoms. The underlying disease continues to progress. You can take drugs to control diabetes. Not one of them actually deals with the cause. You will still progress in diabetes down the road. The good news is, if you will come back and follow God's simple principles, diabetes reverses. We see it up at Weimar Institute every month. People go up, they start eating fruits and vegetables and grains and nuts and seeds and walking, and what happens? Their diabetes goes away. What happens to their blood pressure? Goes away. What happens to all of their obesity? They start losing weight. Yeah, their fatty liver starts resolving. What about this arteriosclerotic plaques in the arteries? Yeah, they start cleaning up. Now I've got one picture over there beside the ultrasound machine you can look at, taken on one of the books there, the China study book. You can see this artery with this artery just narrowed up, blood barely getting through it. It's one that really needs to be stented. He went instead to lifestyle, ate fruits, vegetables, grains, seeds, and walked, and what happened? The arteriosclerotic plaque disappeared, and he's got a wide open artery now. You know, we don't need stents and bypass surgeries. We need to come back to God's simple truth. And it's very simple and basic. It's the same truth that he gave us back at the same time he gave us marriage, the same time he gave us a seventh-day Sabbath. When he created us, he told Adam and Eve, look, Here's the trees, the fruits, the seeds. These are your food. It's still true. There's nothing new about our message, but the prophets keep re-explaining, re-expanding, and at least I hope you've got this one truth. Sugar clogs the system. It hinders the working of the living machine. That's a memory verse I hope you can take home. Okay, we've just used our time up right to the second. For the next presentation, after we take a break here, we're going to look at the problems of sugar from a whole nother angle. How many of you have ever heard of the glycocalyx? You will not only hear about the glycocalyx, you will understand more about the glycocalyx than most physicians in this country before you have to go to supper tonight. Okay, we'll see you for that presentation.